Trading the foreign exchange market carries high risk and may not be suitable for all investors. Trading on margin, utilizing leverage can carry an even higher level of risk that can lead to a complete loss of investment funds. So before deciding to trade the foreign exchange market or using any of our software alert products, you should carefully and diligently consider your personal investment objectives, level of experience, and risk tolerance. There is a possibility that you could potentially sustain significant loss. You should not invest any capital or trade that you cannot afford to lose. It is your responsibility to be aware of and understand all risks associated with foreign exchange trading and to seek professional advice from an independent certified financial advisor if you have any doubts. Auvoria Prime does not exercise trading authority over your trades. You and you alone exercise discretionary trading authority over every trade.
Today's the 2nd February 2021. My name is Steve Vetterl. Welcome to the midweek software strategy session call. This is where I take a certain amount of time, typically 45 to 30 minutes, go through what's going on in the world of Forex and maybe a little bit equities, maybe just a wee bit of crypto. Which has been like kryptonite for me, quite frankly, until very recently. So in any case, Forex Factory, yesterday we had pretty rotten numbers that came out from the ISM manufacturing standpoint. No surprise, pandemic related stuff. We do have some big stuff coming on in terms of Thursday and Friday non-farm payrolls to be aware of. Friday, this is typically an event regardless of whether I'm using some sort of algo to trade for me or accepting trades or manually trading. I will usually stay away from the period of time related to a big earnings release, as Friday is, as far as US can have just as much effect on equities as it can on the Forex markets as well. So do keep that in mind. Now, I've gotten a lot of questions both from clients that are at least plugged in on the Forex space, and some of my clients have just by default become plugged in because I think they like the Forex stuff, and a couple of them actually use the Auvoria Prime for trading some larger accounts, which is cool. So I've gotten a lot of questions related to the US dollar. Let's go to that chart. I don't think this should be any surprise to those that have been consistent followers of me weekly ramblings on the US dollar. Why? Because very simply, oh, why this darn blue lines here? Let me get rid of this. I have talked a lot about the fact that we have spent a pretty significant amount of time, you're looking at a daily chart, tradingview.com. We're significant by any measure in Forex is more than a couple of months, which seems strange, not significant in real time. But since the beginning of December, as you can see here, we've been trading in a approximately $1.50 range with the US dollar, which notice this is just lifted. First time in a little over 2 months that we've lifted, and now we're peaking our head above the 91 areas I talked about to expect on Saturday. Okay, so we're beginning to sort of come to fruition here. This is not abnormal. Why is it lifting? Well, if you take a look at the US dollar on a longer term scale, or heck, even if I move to a weekly chart, right, this thing's moved down over $10 since its high, right? So it would not be out of the ordinary to have somewhat of a retest or trade back in to that area. I think a lot of it is just mostly short-term focus based on whether or not we can gather the steam among the idiots in Washington, D.C. On the left and the right to get any kind of measurable package together, which looks like it's falling apart. And that's why we're having a lift in the dollar. Surprisingly enough, with all the amounts of debt that we've taken on relative to the rest of the world, which in some cases have taken on debt for the underlying companies or the underlying countries, generally a devaluing event to their currency. This is still looked at as one of the safe havens. So at some point, it's beginning again to trade higher. I would expect us to head back potentially to the 92 area would be my first stop. You can see where that is a big area of resistance on the long-term chart. That would be the weekly. If we drop back to the daily chart, I've actually have that line on here as well, just so we can see how it may manifest itself in terms of a target. But those are the reasons that the dollar's lifting. There's a chance that we may stop here and head back down to the 87, 85 area. Ultimately, I think that's where we're headed. If in fact we can add more debt to our already fairly staggering debt that this country holds, God help us. But I do understand from a personal perspective on what's going on. There are people that are really getting hammered, mostly in states where they have been completely locked down and their businesses have fallen apart, mostly in retail, restaurants. So our hearts go out to those. We spend as much money as we can here locally in Temecula supporting a number of breweries and restaurants that we know are on the edge. So I think we can all do our part if it's in the budget. But that's kind of what I see going on as far as the DXY. So the Q&A window is open. Feel free to ask questions in the Q&A, and we'll see if we can try to get them answered as well. Do put the questions in Q&A, not the chat window. So you can ask chat questions of your fellow comrades. Do keep in mind, for those, that this is going to sound monotonous. It is an important risk management measure. Make sure that you are following me on Telegram. I have posted a lot of stuff in Telegram. I'm actually going to show this to you so everybody can see where we are. This is the Telegram channel. I do not have the link for it. You have to find that in the back office. That sort of forces you to go in the back office anyway. But what I did put in is just because I'm not going to get into this today, but if you want to see what's going on with, the Wall Street Bets crowd on Reddit and them terrorizing different stuff, metals, stocks, so forth, which, by the way, they're all getting completely clobbered today, that crowd. Looks like hedge funds stepped up to bash them back down into the ground with big hammers. I did put a primer on US dollar, so you can understand kind of what's going on with the index as a whole. A little bit of history, the weights, the approximate weights. These aren't guarantees. These fluctuate slightly. But just talking a little bit about the formation of it and how it sort of plays out. But I've been putting a lot of stuff on Telegram recently, so updates on different pieces of software from the developers directly. I will add more to that as we trade. But for those of you exploring Neo, there isn't any currency shifting. It's just essentially trading one currency, and not much changes going on there. But I did put on let's see if I can find it here. And make sure this has been addressed with a lot of you guys with the VPS updates and so forth. This is a really important piece. You want to make sure you can communicate. You can always go on my channel and go into the core if you want to look for things like photos or files. Just puts them in an organized place. I thought this one was pretty cool because I've had a lot of people ask me about the Forex cheat sheet, which is on there as well as candlestick analysis. I put some different chart patterns on. This is a pretty good one. I would recommend memorizing. So you kind of look, even though a lot of our software is going to alert you just a lot of this stuff, it's good to kind of be able to see it without an alert coming to you. So I always recommend going through anything from bilateral, reversal, and continuation patterns. Essentially, it's just an up pattern. This particular one here, though, is just a candlestick analysis. I think that you really have to understand there's really no much difference between an up and down candle other than the size of the body and when it closed and opens. So up candles open at the bottom of the body and they close higher for the day, right? And remember, if there's more than one or two of these candles, it's called one time framing up or down. Okay, so that's typically a bullish in the direction of an up, whereas the red candle is opening higher, closing with a lower price. And if that was the case, going down successively 1, 2, 3, or 4 more, it's something you want to note that we continue to go lower, closed lower. That is called one time framing lower versus one time framing higher. So these are important, just at least general points that I have taught to some of my oldest clients. So when I show them the charts and what's going on, they're kind of plugged in. And I have a 91-year-old client. She's awesome. She's in great shape, still drives a car. It's one of my bigger clients, and she loves it when I bring the charts into our quarterly meetings. So anybody can learn technical analysis if you put your mind to it, sticking to just the big picture stuff. Okay, so that's the DXY. Obviously, the opposite of that is Euro USD. Okay, notice this line as well as the DXY resistance line. Essentially, both these red lines have lifted and lowered respectively, just by a little bit. But essentially, now the support has moved down. Doesn't necessarily mean we're going to bounce back up, but the flexibility or the dynamicism with which these particular lines move is a testament to the flexibility of these support and resistance, what's called squeeze zones that design has developed. It's pretty slick stuff. So keeping a more dynamic type of support or resistance in movement. So that's a little bit on Euro US dollar. GBP USD, same thing. Notice we've touched this upper resistance line. What do we want? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Was that over 7 times? Couldn't get over it. So usually you'll have a pullback against that. Now, what oftentimes happens, and I don't know this is necessarily going to show its face, but sort of a little, so this finishes out today as a doji candle, as you see here, which is typically an indecision day. Many times, and obviously the dollar is going to have to act on this on the other side of this first, but a lot of times you'll have a doji form, and then the next day they'll absolutely blast through the upper resistance level. So this is a little like stuck in just enough shorts so that we can go barbecue them as we blast through the upper range. This is a very common chart pattern in almost anything, whether it be metals, currencies, equities, any kind of credit or bond based or the derivatives thereof. It's a popular chart pattern where you spend enough time against it, especially on a higher time frame like a daily or certainly a weekly chart. Some sort of doji will form slightly lower, maybe on lower volume like you're seeing today, although don't put as much into the volume on these types of charts, but on lower volume ideally, and then it blasts back up through this and has a continuation pattern, possibly one time framing up. Now, whether that's going to be the case or not, I don't know. Dollar is lifting, obviously. So, but if I, outside of the chart patterns that I usually will show, or the general ones that are taught in technical analysis, I like to sort of bring up the ones that have high probabilities, as I've talked a lot about over the summer with breakouts in both dollar lower as well as all other currencies for the most part attached to it among the majors that are broken out higher. GBP, JPY, okay, same thing, daily chart. Not going to go too deep into this. I just want to show you guys what's going on. Stuck inside the range, Euro, JPY. Okay. Why is the Euro pulling back in this particular case when the Euro, and no surprise, is pulling back here as well? Dollar's lifting. So with something like this, I usually want to look at USD JPY, which we'll look at next, and or Euro USD first before I move into the analysis of what's still a major, but I consider it a pin action based currency, looking at the other ones first. So USD JPY. Now, one thing to note here, if I just squeeze this down so we can see a little bit longer term. Now, what have we done? Now, in all fairness, my trend lines, they're great. Let's see if I can adjust this. Usually want to anchor this to at least 1 or 2 points, but and then extend it out. But ideally, can have it somewhere like that. And if I extend this down, not the best drawing job on this one. Okay. We've broken out of a downtrend in the dollar yen. And I think this is becoming, as of the last couple of days, this is becoming now something that is almost as important to look at as starting off with the DXY. So ideally, you want to move from DXY down to USD JPY, obviously taking a look at these two as well as correlations between the Euro and JPY and then a Euro GBP, but now becoming maybe a little bit of a tell as to what could happen here. Now, the DXY is not going to be drug around, if you will, by one currency, but it may have some prominence in just a little bit of an insight, if you will, as to what's going on. Okay, and if I've thoroughly confused everybody there, sorry. But it's all about understanding, what pins are going to move to the front. Just think of a bowling alley, right? You constantly have of the main pin as your primary place in terms of any serious hits to the front of it, having a chain reaction through the rest of the pins. So I often talk about the concept of pin action that plays off of things. So, if one drug company, use Johnson & Johnson or Pfizer as an example as the main pin, comes out with, just some stellar, as they have with the coronavirus, some sort of, fast to market vaccine, it could have an effect on many of the pins in that sequence. Does that make sense? So when I talk about pin action, really is that there's a primary indicator, that first pin, that is leading potential waves or movement, if you will, in varying degrees of energy through the rest of the pack. And this happens a lot. So as a portfolio manager, ideally, you're not going to maybe be the guy that buys Pfizer because of this groundbreaking vaccine or whatever their drug is, right? Maybe they were in co-development with a couple of other pharmaceutical companies on this, and many of the other sort of secondary players in that game are as much better buy right now, right? So you're not going to go after the primary pin. You can get some pin action off of some of the other pins. All right, so Telegram, you can find the link to me in the back office. Daniela, let's take a look at the NAS, since I seem to get a lot of requests for this. So NAS comes in two forms, guys. So we've got the IXIC, which is obviously the composite in and of itself, and then you can always just look at an analysis on just the Qs. Okay, so this is I prefer, it doesn't really matter, but I prefer to look at the index generally. I don't really want to use a lot of ETFs with the exception of gold and silver to analyze what an index can probably do a better job at. So that's kind of where we are. But, back near all-time highs, lifted up a bunch. Don't want to spend too much time in equities, but, still pretty solid in equity land. We're up really near the highs on a lot of these. Notice that the reactions of the lower and the support resistance squeeze zone lines again from Desan held in both cases. Market lifted back up. Pretty solid stuff, albeit not in this particular case built on a lot of movement from essentially 4 prior candles, but still holding a pretty broad support area. And the common man is getting crushed today. So, especially if you're chasing after silver or some of the other Wall Street bet stocks, they're getting clobbered. I think it's like rats off a sinking ship today and some of that stuff. So we got dollar for equities, Telegram. What other questions do we have? If there's a stimulus package that gets approved and pushed out that would decrease the strength of the dollar, it's possible. Remember, the market is a forward indicator of future something, right? So future movements in money supply, right? Future potential earnings growth, right? The market is a discounting factor of some further event down the road. So, and that's probably one of the more tougher concepts to to be able to theorize as an analyst or a beginning trader or somebody just beginning to learn technical analysis that, the market's a discounting mechanism, meaning that it is reflecting, albeit sometimes not right, it is reflecting currently what the future looks like in the market. And no better example of that can be dislocations in price, right? So just take a look at a chart of Tesla. Tesla is an extreme example of discounting future growth. Tesla right now is priced to perfection for almost the next decade. So if there's any disruptions, and keep in mind, part of that is a cult following among EV folk, but there is emerging a number of EVs globally, both in semi truck Nikola and or EVs that are going to be just as good, if not better than the Tesla, coming out of from certainly Porsche, as well as NIO and XPEV, which are two upstart EVs in China that are just clobbering it right now. So, but the market is a forwarding mechanism, discounting. So this is always a great question that Ken asks, and it is, so is it time to start trading USD pairs with more confidence, right? Now, if I go out and say yes, and then the market could completely put a foot in my mouth, right? It can always happen. I think the key is if you're going to be trading US dollar pairs, which I've never been not against, right? There's just been periods of time over the last year that I have decided to have the Forex trading turned off, right? Or maybe I haven't been able to devote as much time to manually trading, which is my own damn fault because I'm missing out on a lot of good arrow trades, quite frankly. But I'm going to get back into it more. I've freed up a bunch of time. I've actually hired a paraplanner that can help me a lot with unloading stuff off my table from a client perspective. So we'll be able to move into more trading, which is just costing me money because I could be sitting in front of these screens executing instead of screwing around with office work. So we are changing the trajectory there. So hopefully I will be able to provide more insight and or show up in the Arrow trading room, which I'm actually was totally looking forward to this week until I got bogged down. Let's take a look at GBP NZD. My favorite crazy ass currency pair. All right, so daily chart, we're still in a tight range. And if we look at the weekly on this one, do know that this particular, and especially with some of these wild movements during the pandemic, for those solely trading this, which had a very high win rate with some of our previous versions of Einstein and Alexander, but it was just too much Wild West stuff. And this move here alone blew out a lot of accounts, right? So I still am not a fan, even though the win rates were certainly there with a lot of Jesse's excellent research on this. There's just too much propensity, in my opinion, for this to just go crazy ass on us. In which case, there isn't any software in existence on this planet that can manage that level of sequences being put on. It's just going to blow the account out. So, but for whatever it's worth, there's your GBP analysis. The other one I was being asked for is NZD CAD. Did I keep that or did I blow it out? Here's NZD USD, by the way, just so you know. Gaining some strength, obviously. Over the course of, actually, let me drop back to the daily chart first. So it's been gaining strength pretty much since the bottom of the pandemic. This looks like, really is due for a pretty decent pullback. But, a lot of that's going to be just dollar specific to get some strength built before this thing can have any kind of significant pullbacks. I do expect if the market gets a whiff that there will be an additional or subsequent additionally stimulus packages coming out that will pull the dollar down. When, how long, I don't know. I wish I did. I see if it's possible to ask Dasan to open up a Telegram group that allows variable users to communicate as we do with Gearbox and Arrow. So the Gearbox group, if I'm not mistaken, is limited. I have so many Telegram groups. I'm a member of them, all these beta groups, everything. So here is if you guys don't know, here is the Arrow chat, exceptionally lively chat in this group. I think that everybody should limit their questions in this group to asking quality questions, not having senseless banter and videos posted, but that's just me. The variable, I think that that's going to be up to Bill and Josh and Chris, quite frankly. But the end is going to be whether or not Dasan has the time in his day to monitor it. He has an exceptionally structured day to the point that anytime him and I want to talk, we talk about various items, has between like 6 and 7 p.m. Eastern time. That's how structured his day is. And a lot of it's just because he spends time on his help desk. I keep telling him to hire somebody, but he spends time on his help desk, helping these folks opening up tickets and stuff. But if you guys truly want, and I have heard this, but I understand the chorus is growing louder, I can ask them. You guys want to see that? And I don't have, because I see the next question, I don't have a lot of, I sat on my first call with Neo. I haven't seen anything on Stratamus yet. It's just my own lack of time. Blame me for that. But I was really impressed with Neo. I got to tell you guys, just a beautiful addition in the diversification. I think all should have if they can afford it eventually with, multiple access passes. Beautiful piece. Much more consistent. You're not switching currencies around. It's one currency. And there really isn't that many changes to the settings. So it's just like set it and let the software do its work. But I do think, I do agree with the variable. I would think that if I was Dasan opening up this room, I would want very strict rules as to what can be posted, no crazy videos, because quite frankly, it just takes up too much of your time having to sift through all that to get to the important questions, right? So that's why we have the Zendesk ticketing system. Make sure you follow that so we can truly log any consistent issues that users are having with any of the pieces of software. So that really is what should be communicated most frequently to your guys up and down lines, is utilize the ticketing system because it is a data collection in addition to fixing issues. Just to end that question, Ken, I know I got off in a diatribe, but I have a little more confidence right now with the USD pairs. And watch, it'll go completely against what I'm saying. Not sure what a treetop overview on Neo is. That just a macro question you have, David? Because it's out there. If you guys go into the whole back office area, it's there. What else is I going to show? Yeah, just make sure you guys are communicating to your up and down lines. We're still getting tons of tickets about people that haven't even figured out the VPS thing. I mean, you guys should have had that all straightened out like weeks ago. So let me get back into the charts here. I never really understood this, and I get it. People have things to do and all, but when I had my first job outside of college, before I actually got into the brokerage gig as an analyst and a trader, I worked for about 3 or 4 months with an ad agency called Precision Digital, and this at the time, this is like the late mid 90s when they were beginning to come out with truly high-end digital stuff for building annual reports. And I was in Cincinnati at the time where I graduated from finance school at Xavier and got a job with a company called Precision Digital, and I got to see a lot of this, but I got to meet a lot of the Procter and Gamble brand managers, the guys who run like Pringles and Tide, all these groups. I work a lot with these guys. And the thing that just always shocked me when I'd be in meetings with these guys is they told me that commercials on TV run so much, like as an example, the Geico commercials, we're all sick of hearing or sick of seeing in this country or Progressive, because the average person needs to see something 12 to 15 times to get it. Isn't that bananas? 15 times for it to sink in. Didn't understand that. Never. All right. So, and yeah, I agree with you, Floyd. That would be the rule with me. God love Nathan. I know he probably spends a lot of time sifting through this stuff. The guy is just a champ. I wouldn't do it. I would just come in with some just, to the wall rules. And that way it's just easier for me to just rip through this, or heck, even have, you could even have an assistant, which he should have soon, tearing through that and pulling all the questions out. Either way, I just think though the problem is that people get away from really putting true issues they may be having in the ticketing system, and it somewhat dilutes Bill Wynn's efforts to put serious data collection, which is a big deal, in the back office. So I don't want to recommend a way to sort of dilute that, because but these chat windows can be quite collaborative if used correctly. That's the key. But I will make the recommendation to the Sun. All right, let's see, what else do we have here? NZD CAD, let's take a quick look at that. Sorry, I think I was going to show you that and I lost my way. Here we go. NZD CAD, daily chart first. Not much has changed. This is not looking head and shouldery, by the way. Head, all right, head, shoulders, see? Kind of. Neckline would be right around here, right? Somewhere inside this current area. A lot of this, though, is total pin action. And this currency is probably on the third or fourth row of like a bowling pin. So this is much further down the energy level, which you first have to derive off of the Canadian dollar's relationship with the US dollar first and foremost before you even look at this chart. In any case, holding within support resistance points. Looks like we may go back down, test the 90. It's possible. GBP NZD already went through. We got that done. What else? Yes, you're welcome. Happy New Year. Very cool. Looks like that's it for all the questions. You guys are making it easy for me today. You should ask me the tough questions. Like, Steve, we hold you to it. Where's the dollar going to be in 6 months? I have no idea, right? I often joke on Twitter about prognosticators, and I guess I unfortunately have become one, right? But I do understand that we could always be wrong on this stuff. But if you're going to spend your time in anything, make sure all the software you have is fully updated on the VPS. Make sure you're beginning to get some of the stuff I'm talking about, at least from a macro perspective and technical analysis. You understand how these reports can impact trading. Those are the best times spent because they reduce the most risk inside your accounts. Spending all your time watching all of the markets is cool, and it may make you paranoid. It may make you more comfortable, but learning obviously how to educate yourself, and that would start with going through a Days A. Duncan's course in the back office first and foremost. So, and I know that some of the onboarding videos are being changed around, so do understand that. So just bear with us here. We've been going through, obviously some transition changes, but I know we're going to be removing a lot of the videos that are Sal and Vanessa directed, and replacing those with a equal alternative. And who knows, maybe you guys will see more Mug in some of these videos. But key thing really is, always focus first and foremost on risk analysis. If you talk to anybody about last week's activities, and or spend any time inside of Wall Street Bets, it is an absolute clinic in lack of risk management. I mean, those guys are just putting on a clinic. I can't tell you how many pictures I have seen of people that have taken 3/4, in some cases, all of their equity account and put the entire thing in GameStop at $400 a share. Okay. Guess where GameStop is today? Let's show you. So you can have a beautiful example of a lack of risk management. Okay. So here's the GameStop chart. I know for a fact that there were some putting 7-figure accounts in this stock, 100% of the account. Some of these people, maybe they're a lot richer than the 7 figures they were taking pictures of, but just an absolute unhinged removal from risk management. And it's going to kill some people, literally. There's probably be people jumping out of windows because they took too much risk, and they completely clobbered a life savings of 7 figures. I've seen it happen. Don't be that person, okay? So if I leave nothing else with you guys in terms of an education, I want you to think about that story. Hey, it looks like you're new there, Tony. Welcome. Hey, Steve, I'm new to AP. I have some questions for you coming out soon. Not on this call. No, that's good. Hey, that's good. Keep coming. You guys can always send me these questions. It's probably easier if you ask me in an open forum where everybody can see it. Else it's much more effective than just sending me an email. But just be constantly thinking about risk management, guys. It's one of the most important things that probably can be structured in your entire life because it affects everything you do, right? My kids are sick of hearing about this because we just got my kid a new mountain bike. We're getting a whole bunch of mountain bikes here because going to the gyms out here is a futile endeavor with all the equipment outside. But you know, just keep trying to constantly explain the importance of wearing a helmet, right? And then he crashed his nice mountain bike we got him the other day and almost hit his head on a tree. No helmet, right? So now he's not allowed on the bike without a helmet. So in any case, risk management. So I'll see you guys on Saturday.